Breaking news to begin NFL Live. A blockbuster trade is being finalized today to send Pro Bowl wide receiver Stefon Diggs from Buffalo to Houston. Sources telling our Adam Schefter, and he'll join us momentarily. The Bills will receive a 2025 second-round pick in exchange for Diggs, a 2024 sixth-round pick, and a 2025 fifth-round pick. Diggs had at least 100 receptions in all 4 of his seasons with the Bills. He's one of 4 players in NFL history to catch at least 100 passes in 4 consecutive seasons, joining Antonio Brown, Devontae Adams, and Marvin Harrison. What a crew we have today. Phil Yates in studio with us. He's got a mock draft. We'll get to that in just a little bit. Adam Schefter is with us as well. Marcus Spears joining in just a bit. Couple of Dans are going to be dropping in later this hour. Graziano and Orlovsky. We've got breaking news, so of course we'll get their opinion. Adam, we want to start with you though. Why did Buffalo trade away their top wideout?
Laura, this was something that had been brewing for recent months and really the last couple of seasons, where there were enough hints about Stefon Diggs being unhappy in Buffalo, his brother posting at various points on social media about Stefon Diggs wanting out, and today the Buffalo Bills acquiescing and sending him to Houston for, in part, a 2025 second-round draft pick. Now, again, you could see Buffalo's offense not use Stefon Diggs in the second half of the season quite as much last year as they had. They came to rely on other weapons like James Cook and their former first-round draft pick, Dalton Kincaid. We saw some sideline incidents with Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen. We saw a year ago at the mandatory minicamp, Stefon Diggs not show up. The head coach, Sean McDermott, say he was very concerned. And lo and behold, the next day, Stefon Diggs is back. But all was not well. And this relationship had run its course, and Buffalo was prepared to go in a different direction, agreeing to a trade today to send Stefon Diggs to Houston, giving the Texans even more firepower and leaving Buffalo with a remade wide receiver crew on its hands now that it's traded Diggs to Houston and lost Gabe Davis to Jacksonville in free agency.
Marcus Spears is here now, as you can tell. And with all that context, Swagoo, how do you think Josh Allen's feeling about this?
Yeah, he has to be in an area of unknown. Boogie, listen, like Schefter just alluded to, Stefon Diggs and Gabe Davis is gone as well, and that's the production of your wide receiver group. Khalil Shakir came on during the playoffs. He was a phenomenal slot receiver, but you look at this roster that added Curtis Samuel, and you still look at it and say, well, who's the number 1 wide receiver? And I know we're focusing on the draft, and there's a lot of wide receiver talent in this draft, but Josh Allen has to be looking around like this cupboard is getting pretty bare. And let alone Stefon Diggs, his guy with the most production. You look at the offensive and defensive side, and this could be the remnants of missing an opportunity. But Josh Allen has to be in a situation now where he's looking around saying, who am I going to get in order for us to compete in a rough AFC when it comes to how many good teams and good quarterbacks it is?
Let's address that bare cupboard, Field. What are their options in the draft?
Well, certainly this is a deep wide receiver class, Laura, and that is great news for the Buffalo Bills. My fear for Buffalo is if you hang tight at pick number 28, the kind of receiver that the Bills might want to target right now could bypass them, because this is a team who needs some size into that wide receiver spot after trading away Stefon Diggs. It's worth noting, though, that their GM, Brandon Beane, has traded up in the first round 4 times over the past 6 years. I'm not talking about necessarily a first-round trade-up that goes from pick 28, where they are now, into the top 10. That's prohibitively expensive. That would be kind of an all-in move. But could we see the Buffalo Bills move from 28 to 18, 20, 21, 22? That might put you in the territory for players like Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU, one of the great deep accelerators in the class, and A.D. Mitchell, big-bodied wide receiver from Texas, who also ran in the 4.3s, had just 1 drop last season, and both of those guys have kind of the body type that might fit what the Buffalo Bills are now looking for in this post-Stefon Diggs era.
You think about that draft room on draft night, and Brandon Beane could be just looking there and saying, like, all right, so A.D. Mitchell's still there. Brian Thomas Jr. is still there. Yeah, we will try to get up a few spots. It's an astute way to look at it. Brandon Beane, by the way, is speaking right now. We'll bring that to you momentarily. Adam, when you think about the free agency world with wide receivers, T. Higgins an option for them? Is there somebody else they should be looking for?
Well, Laura, Field touched on the draft options, and by and large, that's what this team is going to have to rely on, because by trading Stefon Diggs right now, the Bills are taking a cap charge of over $30 million, which is the largest cap charge ever taken for a wide receiver. They're about $4 million under the salary cap. So they could not afford to go trade for a wide receiver like T. Higgins. It wouldn't work with where they're at against the salary cap. So either they're going to have to find an underpriced free agent wide receiver, somebody like a Michael Gallup that's out there, or they're going to have to find a receiver in the draft. But to think that they could go trade for T. Higgins, that's not an option for this team right now. They will not be able to do that because they can't afford it, in part because of the cap charge and the cap hit they're taking for trading Diggs today.
That's the sticking point, is the unknown, right? Like if you go get a free agent that is proven outside of T. Higgins, you deal with the fact of, what if this guy doesn't pan out to be what we need him to be? And you have to even ask that question about rookies, even if you're moving up for as much as attention these guys are about to get and the talent that they're bringing to the next level. The positive is we've seen a lot of rookie wide receivers have a tremendous amount of success in this league because the game has started to translate from college to what they're doing in the pros. But Josh Allen, it all goes back to him. You think there was an immense amount of pressure to perform at a high level? Well, after today, it's just got heightened by 10. Yeah. And the Buffalo Bills and Brandon Beane have to do something to put some more talent at that position because, like I said before, all of the production for the majority of what they did at wide receiver has left the building.
I admittedly have not heard what Brandon Beane might be saying right now, Laura, so I don't know exactly how he is going to justify this trade of Stefon Diggs, but let's just call a spade a spade. Adam referenced the fact that the Bills actually lose salary cap space this year. They got a 2025 second-round pick, a pick a year away. And by the way, some people would say a 2025 second-round pick is a modest price for Houston to pay to acquire Stefon Diggs. And beyond that, of course, they got a lot worse on this roster. A thin wide receiver room just got that much thinner. That tells you something. Despite the Bills' best efforts, going all the way back to mandatory minicamp last year to downplay that things could be a little bit amiss between Stefon Diggs and the organization, today was the realization that things clearly were not being seen eye to eye.
It was.
And this is one, and Swagoo, this makes it one of the most fascinating trades in a long time in the NFL.
Big time. When you see a trade like this, 100%. A really good player that you try to hold on to for all that time, you go through an entire season with, he still wasn't happy, it still wasn't working out. We will bring you what Brandon Beane is saying as soon as we can get that your way. Let's go to the Texans side of this trade. C.J. Stroud gets another weapon to work with after his historic rookie season, and Stroud led the NFL in passing yards per game and touchdown to interception ratio. He joined Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and John Elway as the only quarterbacks over the last 35 seasons to lead the NFL in both of those categories. Those three quarterbacks all did it in their 8th season or later. Stroud did it as a rookie. I love that stat because I think it really tells the Stroud story. I mean, he's just better than we've seen in a really long time, maybe better than anyone has ever been as a rookie. Marcus, is Diggs a fit in that Houston offense?
Yes, he is. Listen, this is the happy part of what we talk about with this trade. First of all, listen, I love Buffalo. I love Bills Mafia, but sometimes it gets old playing in that cold. So for Stefon Diggs, this is probably a godsend for him. And you think about it, I live here in Dallas. He's now 3.5 hours away from his brother. And if anybody knows both of those guys, this relationship is phenomenal when you start talking about how close they are and how much they care about each other and want to be around each other. But not only that, we watched C.J. Stroud last year. And if you're the Houston Texans, you make this move because C.J. Stroud showed you in a rookie year, I am good enough with pieces around me for us to be a legitimate threat in the AFC once we get into the playoffs. Stefon Diggs adds to a group of Tank Dell coming off of injury. Obviously, we saw how explosive he was down the field. You think about Nico Collins and how he stepped up, but the route running ability of Stefon Diggs married to the accuracy and ability to push the ball to C.J. Stroud is phenomenal.
Big Swagoo, we got 2 Diggs brothers now in the state of Texas, not having to pay state income tax. I'm sure they're very happy about that. And the Houston Texans are very happy about having Stefon Diggs. And let's go back to how long they've been looking at this and eyeing Stefon Diggs. Let's go back a couple of weeks to when they called the Minnesota Vikings to initiate the trade to get extra second-round draft picks to move out of the first round. It wasn't the Vikings who were in need of a quarterback who initiated that trade. It was the Texans that initiated that trade. And they initiated it because they had a specific purpose in mind. The specific purpose was to get extra twos so they could then go trade for somebody like Stefon Diggs, who they were eyeing for this offense, restructuring contracts after that trade to create more salary cap space. So this really had been something that the Texans had been thinking about and planning for in the last few weeks. And today they were able to make it a reality by agreeing to get that deal done and to bring in Stefon Diggs to make him the newest offensive weapon in an offense that has accumulated a ton of weapons. And one more thing about the Houston Texans. I want you to think about how far this franchise has come. 2 years ago, this team was a laughingstock.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nobody around the league thought much of them, respected them. They were able to trade Deshaun Watson, who had legal issues, who had issues with the NFL, and get a boatload of compensation back. They were then able to turn that into arguably the best young quarterback in the game, who there was some luck involved in that pick as well, because they won in Indianapolis, the last game that sent them to number 2, to only see Bryce Young go number 1, leaving C.J. Stroud there too. And now this offseason, with a great rookie under the rookie quarterback contract, they've been able to surround him with all the weapons that they have, making them as legitimate a threat as there is in the league, and capping the turnaround from this team from 2 years ago to where it was in the National Football League. An incredible rise up for the Houston Texans.
What's the luck involved? But the Texans have been a couple steps ahead, it seems like, even going back to the draft. And then, as Adam was just talking about, making sure they had those second-round picks. They initiated that trade.
What a fascinating note. It makes me rethink whether I should be so confident that Minnesota is going to try to move further up the board from number 11, where they currently stand, in 23 as well. I think just a quick draft note, it'd be a bit reductive to say that it's just C.J. Stroud, but he's certainly the driving force behind this turnaround for Houston, but a good lesson for the teams at the top of the board. Sometimes it's worth resisting temptation to move down. Take that quarterback, roll the dice. He can change the franchise around more than any other player. And some people are probably saying, why would the Texans take on Stefon Diggs if he admittedly had some frustration publicly on the sidelines in Buffalo? To me, this was a reflection of how strongly they feel about the leadership right now in Houston. DeMeco Ryans, their head coach, and C.J. Stroud, their quarterback, can keep Stefon Diggs on the straight and narrow, because when he's on his game, one of the most productive and best receivers in the NFL.
And maybe that scenery change is just what he needed anyway. All right, we do have Brandon Beane. He's speaking right now, but here's the latest from Buffalo and their GM.
Yeah, real quick, obviously we know why we're here with the move with Steph. First want to thank Steph, 4 really good seasons, when we traded for him in the COVID year. And I really appreciate everything he brought to the team. It was a big part of, us winning 4 divisions. And these moves are never easy, very hard, not made overnight, anything like that. But anytime you make a move like this, as I said, very difficult, you're doing it, you're trying to win. And sometimes people may not see that, this is by no means the Bills giving up or trying to take a step back or anything like that. Everything we do, we're trying to win, and we're going to continue to do that. It's, it's April the 3rd or 4th, whatever it is, and we'll continue to work on this roster and make sure we're ready to play come September.
Adam, what do you make of Beane's comments there?
Listen, I think this is a move that the Buffalo Bills knew was coming, and a move that they felt like they had to make. It was inevitable with this relationship running its course that the Bills were going to have to go in a different direction. And so sometimes, as great as Stefon Diggs is, there's addition by subtraction. And sometimes you can create a better environment even though you don't have the talent that you'd like in Buffalo. And so that is what the Buffalo Bills, I believe, are putting their hopes into right now, that they're hoping some of these young receivers can step up. They're hoping that there's better chemistry. They're hoping that there's not some of the sideline disagreements that there were between Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs. It's hard to lose a player as great as Stefon Diggs. 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, 4 straight Pro Bowls. We know what he's capable of, but they're hoping that by moving on, that this team somehow can be just as good, just as effective.